What's up, internet? My name's Ori. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. You like this video, hit that like button, hit that notification bell. You'll never miss a video. You'll never miss a stream. Today we're going over the BBCan11 finale. We had the winner crowned last night, and honestly, it was a really good finale. We're going to kind of be going over what happened on it, what was good, what was bad, my thoughts on kind of the season as a whole. But also, before we jump into that, I just want to thank everyone who came and was watching last night on Kick and Twitch. We had a real long kind of birthday celebration as well as a finale watch along. So it was a lot of fun hanging out with all of you guys. Here are a few clips of some of the madness that we got up to, including eating the world's hottest hot sauce. The flavor is good. Oh. But it gets up on you quick. Woo. It's settling down. It's settling down. Nope, it's still there. Oh boy. Oh. Ooh, boy. Ooh. Hello, Clarice. World's spiciest hot sauce. You're only supposed to do one of them. But you guys did two back to back. Oh, you can smell it. I can smell it. Oh, here we go. Okay, I think they canceled each other out. It's not that bad. Oh no, it's coming. Oh, it was a late bloomer. Hope you enjoyed some of those little clips there. If you haven't joined me on the Twitch or the Kick streams, check out the links in the description down below, pinned comment as well. You can check out things for all of my socials, Twitter, Discord, Twitch, Kick, all that stuff. Follow what you want, ignore what you want. But thank you guys all so much for the support. It was a rough one. But going into the finale, there was a lot of really good stuff. First, the thing that I was surprised and glad to see was a live audience return to the show for Canada. We finally had it return about midway through BB24, and we got to see some live audience back in there, but we haven't seen any live audiences in Canada for over 2 seasons now, since BBCan 8 ended. So it was really nice to see people back in there, being able to cheer them as they came out of the house. There was a lot of shade being thrown around by not just production, but the houseguests. One in particular that I thought was really pretty funny was when they said that Daniel was playing with himself and then immediately went to Claudia and Ty making out. And it was like, that was a bit awkward. We had Vanessa throwing shade at Zach. It's like, well, Vanessa, you quit as well. There was a lot of shade going around the entire episode, and I don't know, I just thought it was pretty good. We did get one of the best jury roundtables I think we've ever had in Big Brother. They were legit fighting and going after each other. Anika and Kuzi were like no holds barred cat fighting in there. They were going wild. It was all led by Kevin Jacobs, but the real show was between the houseguests themselves, debating on whether or not they turned their back on each other, and they almost didn't even care about who was winning at that point. They just wanted to get their word in and say their piece to each other. We then move on into the actual HOH competition, the final HOH. Part 1 was really cool. It was a competition that I can't remember if we've seen on Big Brother Canada before, I know I've seen it on Survivor, and this isn't the first time that Big Brother Canada has kind of taken aim from Survivor with their competitions. Even this season, there were a few that were also former Survivor competitions. I know this one in particular I've seen, I believe, on the most recent season of Survivor Australia. Basically, there was a wire that was connected to a podium. As you pulled that wire away, it would spin the podium, and you had to stack things on there, these discs. And basically, the idea was you wanted to have it as centered as possible because anything that was off center would start to wobble and eventually fall as you got higher. One thing I really liked about this, there was a particular order you had to place them in as well. And it didn't seem like it was at least hard to tell. I wasn't sure if anyone actually did the strategy of looking at their kind of a sheet on how it's supposed to be built, organizing their chips, and then just going back and forth, because that would have been the strategy. That would 100% been the way to go, is organize your discs first, then you just have to go back and forth stacking them, and you don't have to worry about looking in the little pond that they had where the sheet was. But what was a big surprise was I think a lot of us all assumed Ty was going to win part 1 of the HOH. Even when we saw the competition, it still felt like this is Ty's competition to lose. And he did. It ended up being Claudia who came through and won. She was really kind of right there with Ty the whole time. They were really close. She had a bit of a lead on him even before Ty eventually fell, when he was had about 26 of 30 of his pieces stacked up. Claudia had about 27, and Ty was able to, well, not able, but Ty's stack did fall, and Claudia was able to pull out the win in part 1, sending her all the way to part 2 of the final HOH competition. That leads us into part 2, where we got to see Daniel and Ty face off against each other. This was another really kind of cool competition. There's one thing that BBCan always does well. It's their final comps especially, but all of their comps in general usually have really great production value. The last 3 were really phenomenal in how they were presented, and you just have to give BBCan the credit for always bringing it with their competitions. So part 2 had this big clock they were standing on that would spin, and they had to roll a ball basically down one of the hands of the clock that would land in a basket. Those answers would correspond to different things that happened in the house. One was about, who went home on this eviction number, right? Was it like 7 to 3, 4 to 3, stuff like that? Like who went home on these numbers? And there was a lot of different other questions that went along with it, but it was really kind of a fun competition to watch. There was skill and knowledge involved in it. It was a ball game with Ty. It's like, of course, and Ty ends up winning the competition, but it was close. It was only about 15 minutes difference between him and Daniel. Ty struggled with some of the answers. Daniel struggled with some of the answers. They both missed some of their shots. But I was really impressed with both of them here. I don't think Daniel should feel bad about his performance. He did very well, and Ty was able to pull out the win in that one, meaning it was the showmance in the final part of the HOH competition. And even this was back and forth. It was questions about, things that happened with the jury and was this person nominated more? How many people went home as renoms and things like that. It was all factual information about the jury members. And it was very back and forth. Claudia had a lead, Ty tied it up again, then Claudia took the lead again to eventually win that final 3 HOH competition. And she had the sole power on what she wanted to do, who she wanted to take with her to sit next to her in the final 2 and face the jury. Now, when we were doing our little analysis beforehand on the stream as we were watching, we were kind of talking like, what do we think is the scenarios here? Before we even knew Claudia would have been the HOH, we kind of thought it was almost like a rock, paper, scissors scenario. It seemed like Claudia would have beat Daniel. Daniel probably would have beaten Ty. And then Ty would have beaten Claudia, but we weren't 100% sure. That one seemed to be like it might have been the closest one. Going into the vote after Claudia eventually cut Daniel and took Ty with her to the final two, it seemed like that was a decision that was kind of poor for her because it made it as close as it possibly could be. The speeches were not good. The answers to the jury's questions were also not good for either of them. But honestly, it didn't seem like it really mattered. The jury seemed to think, have their decisions kind of made up already going into it. Though I will say, it seemed like a lot of the jury went in there expecting to vote for Ty, but looking for a reason not to vote for Ty. It almost felt like they wanted something, right? They wanted something to give them a reason not to vote for this guy, but they didn't get it. Ty was the winner. He is the winner of BBCan11 and got all the votes except for one. That's what was maybe the most shocking to me. He got Jonathan's vote. I thought Jonathan's vote was a lock for Claudia. He got Renee's vote. I thought she was a lock for Claudia. And the only vote that Claudia ended up getting was Shania. Good old Nene voted for Claudia. I was really surprised that she only got one vote there. And everyone else ended up going Ty, which wasn't a huge surprise. We knew Kuzi was going to be a lock for Ty. Santina was a little bit of surprise. I was pretty sure Hope was going to be a vote for Ty, which also, by the way, when Hope voted, you're supposed to kind of keep it a secret on who you're voting for. You know, you have these little chips or keys that you end up putting into the little turnstile, and you're supposed to kind of like take it out of the box and hide it and put it in. Hope like holds it up. He's like, "Eh, look at everybody." And everybody in the jury is like, "We can see it, Hope." What are you doing? But yeah, it ended up being Ty who won it. Also, we did find out who won Canada's favorite player, and it was Jonathan, who I wasn't really surprised about. I know a lot of people were going into this thinking, oh, Kuzi's going to win Canada's favorite player. You have to remember with Canada, with these public votes, the East Coast vote is always very, very strong. Anytime there's a vote and there's an East Coaster in it, there's a good chance they're going to win. Look back at the Bel Air direct vote. Who won the first two ones? It was Claudia and it was Jonathan, the two East Coasters. Now, that was something that actually gave me a little bit of worry. I wasn't sure if they were going to end up winning it. They were probably my top two picks on who was going to win, even over Kuzi. And even other than Kuzi, there was another name that I thought was up there as well in Santina. I thought she had a really good chance to win Canada's favorite as well, even over Kuzi, because the Indigenous vote also is very strong in Canada. If you look back to BBCan9, Julie Vu was one of the people who was in there that everybody thought was going to win that first vote to be one of the captains of the season. And it ended up being Kiefer and Tina who won that vote. So people were shocked by that, but you shouldn't be at this point. That's just how the Canadian votes work. They always vote for the Newfoundlanders and the Indigenous people that are representing them on the show. And that's how it is. Twitter does not control the vote. As much as people want to go, oh, Kuzi was robbed. It's just how the vote goes. It's how it goes on BBCan. Now, other than that, though, that pretty much covers it for the finale. I just kind of want to talk about all the players kind of individually and kind of give them a little recap on how I think they did in the game. Let's start off just at the very top up there. If you look at our little board, we've got the pre-jurors. We've got them all. What's there to say? She lasted 2 days in the game. She ended up quitting within 2 days, and we only saw her on one episode. Not much to really say, although I did call that she would be the first boot. I didn't expect her to quit to be the first boot. That is not much to say about that one. JM, I think, got a little bit of a rough start. He did end up kind of, burying himself when he told Zach that he was coming after the guys. Zach then went and told Santina that. And it ended up being, funny enough, I don't know if people actually even remember this. Kuzi was kind of the one to put the nail in the coffin of JM. One of the first dailies that we saw Kuzi and JM having a conversation in the backyard where he was saying, I hope she doesn't put me up, and it might make her look, kind of snaky and sneaky to the rest of the house. And Kuzi ran upstairs and ratted him out to Santina, saying, people are saying, you're going to look kind of sneaky if you do this. She's like, who's saying that? Well, JM's saying it. Which, if you tell somebody that, someone else is going around saying you're being a sneak, it's not a way to keep them off the block. Unless Kuzi wanted JM on the block in that situation, it was a terrible decision to tell Santina that. Roberto, he was a good guy, he just ended up going against the guys in the house. Dan ended up being the HOH that week, and he was really kind of controlled by Zach. So that ended up being pretty much it for Rob. I think he could have done really well if he stayed, but he was just cut short by being on the wrong side at the wrong time. Vanessa, another quitter. She was a character in the show. Obviously, she was having issues in the house. I don't think she was ever really comfortable in there. So seeing her quit really wasn't that much of a surprise, if we're being completely honest. So she ended up quitting, which actually then led to Zach leaving as well. If she doesn't quit, there's probably no point where the veto gets used, because Hope is not then on the block by volunteering. The whole letter situation might not even have come into play, and Zach doesn't end up walking, even though he was probably going to be evicted that week after Hope went up and won the veto anyway. So yeah, that was a whole situation, which I guess we could talk about the letter situation one last time here. I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but it was cheating. And there's a few reasons why it was cheating. One, it was an outside source that nobody else had the opportunity to get. Nobody else was getting a letter snuck in with extra clothes that were sent in from the outside. It happens every year that people forget stuff. You forget toothpaste, you forget socks, maybe an extra t-shirt here and there. Things will get sent in, but nobody's getting letters snuck in with that. Only Hope was provided that. And that's really kind of on production. It's not on him necessarily. It's on his girlfriend for sending it in, but for him to keep it and not immediately go to the producers and say, hey, I didn't want this. I haven't read it. Like, please just take it from me. It could have been a wash just like that and everything would have been fine. Instead, he kept it. He held on to it. And that is an emotional thing, an advantage in this game, to be able to have a letter from home, those words of encouragement, things that you can see that can give you that boost every day. On top of it, Hope's game in the very early portion of this season was to play homesick, that he didn't really want to be there anymore. He wanted to leave. He wanted to go home. Like, don't worry about me. Like, I'll go home whenever you want. Even telling Zach and Ty, like, I'll take a bullet for you guys. I'll go home for you. Don't worry about it. When he really was never going to honor that. It was all part of his game. He then used that letter to gain more trust with them that he wanted to go home. It wasn't just that, oh, he had the letter, it was an emotional advantage. He used that as a tool in this game. Other people have used items as a tool in the game to gain trust. Kevin Jacobs had his fake wedding ring. Let's see, Dan swore on a Bible back in the day. That is all fair game, but those are items that are allowed in the house, that were fair game to bring into the house. This was an illegal item he used for that purposes. There is the flip side though. Zach and Ty knowing about the letter and not going to production to tell them about it. Yes, they should have when it first happened. But also, you put yourselves in their position, right? You have this guy who you think you're close to, who you think you're working with, who keeps saying he just wants to go home anyway, and, he just wants to win a competition before he leaves, and, even telling them, yo, line me up for this one. The veto that he won that ended up sending Zach onto the block, he was asking them to throw so that he could just win one competition. They were trying to help him. They cared about him outside of the game on a personal level. Let's say it was Kuzi. If Hope told Kuzi about this letter and she didn't come forward and did the exact same thing that Zach and Ty did, what would people be saying? Would people be saying that, oh, Zach and Ty were just as bad as Hope, or Kuzi was just as bad as Hope for not giving in the letter? No, they'd probably be just as mad at Hope for bringing in the letter and using that against Kuzi. It's one of those things where no one is in the right in this situation, but it definitely was something that puts I don't want to say an asterisk on the season, but it's definitely a bit of a dark shadow in the events leading up to the house. Would much have changed anyway? Would Zach have probably been still a target that week? Because that was always Kuzi's plan, to backdoor Ty or Zach. I don't know, because if Hope wasn't on the block and Vanessa didn't quit, who knows what would have happened in that situation. Moving on from that, though, we eventually get to Dan, he showed some promise in the competitions early. He just never really had a very good connection with almost anybody in the house other than Zach, who seemed to be kind of his number one ally, even though Zach's real number one ally was Ty. He had a bit of a bond with Nene before leaving and some of the girls. But in the end, it ended up being Daniel who ended up saving Ty with the veto. I'm not even sure 100% who would have went home that week if Daniel didn't save Ty in that invisible HOH week. Would Daniel have gone home over Ty? I imagine so, because I think Kuzi wanted Ty to stay more than Dan did. And I think even like Daniel and Anika, even Santina, Jonathan, that was kind of when the crown was already formed there. I think the crown felt like they could work with Ty more than they could work with Dan moving forward. So I think Dan probably leaves anyway if Daniel doesn't save him with the veto. But we won't know that, will we? Jonathan, poor Jonathan. Listen, he was one of the nicest house guests we've had on this show. He just didn't have it in him to play this game, if we're being completely honest. He was a sweetheart, just a real truthful, honest, humble guy who just didn't have that mean streak, that dog in him to be able to play this game. You have to be able to lie, cheat, steal, and do some dirty tactics every so often. And Jonathan just didn't have it in him. And I think he pretty much in the end kind of laid on his sword so that Hope and the rest of them could all move forward in this game. And that was the start of the downfall of the crown, which I will say is the worst alliance in Big Brother history. It is, they had the numbers at this point. Ty had won HOH, but they still had the numbers to be able to say, hey, Ty, like, put up Santina, put up Nene, put up Renee, right? There's no reason to go for Jonathan and Hope, except Hope volunteers to go on the block again. Why? Why would you do that? That only puts your alliance at risk. Hope volunteering for the block was kind of the nail in the crown's coffin there, because if he doesn't volunteer on the block, it's probably Renee and maybe Nene who are up on the block against each other. Maybe Santina, who's up on the block against her. But yeah, it wouldn't have been Santina because she won the Bel Air that week. She won the Bel Air that week, so Santina was safe. So she could not have gone on the block. It had to be Jonathan that week. It forced his hand when Nene won the veto and took down Renee. So Hope putting himself up there as a volunteer to go on the block completely ruined the crown's game moving forward. The following week was the chain of safety week where we ended up seeing Santina leave. And this was kind of the start, even before that, because if Ty didn't win HOH the week that Jonathan left, he was going home. Like, he was the one who was the target ever since Dan left the game. Every single one of those jury members would not be sitting there in the jury. They could have been sitting there in the end if it wasn't for Ty winning a competition that week. So Ty wins the HOH on Jonathan's week. He wins the veto during the chain of safety, which again keeps him safe and sends Santina out the door when she was up against Renee as the final 3 people who were left in the chain. Ty wins the competition and Santina gets voted out. Hope ends up leaving the following week. Again, just more of the crown crumbling. We ended up getting Kuzi, who left the week after that. Kuzi, I guess, yeah, I didn't talk about really Santina's game or Hope's game as well before we get into Kuzi. Santina, I think, had a lot of promise. She had a bit of a rough time handling some of the emotions in the house as far as, hey, you can't always tell somebody that their waffles taste bad. Even if they taste bad, you put a smile on and say, yeah, these waffles are great. You just got to fake it sometimes when you're in that Big Brother house. Santina didn't have that ability in her to really, be fake like that, even for $100,000 in the end. I think Santina was a decent player, but just didn't have it there to be able to have that extra thing to fake it when you want to make it in the house. Hope, I think I've actually talked a little bit enough about Hope. I think his game was terrible. The whole idea of faking being homesick, I think, is a terrible idea as well. The idea also that he felt like competitions were the most important thing in this game and you had to win comps or so what's the point is also silly as well, even though we do end up with a winner who's got the most comp wins in BBCan history. Yeah, Hope, I don't know, wasn't a great player. Kuzi, here's the thing about Kuzi. I had a lot of hope for Kuzi coming into this game. When I heard she was a 911 operator, I was like, that's perfect. She's going to have this ability to kind of de-escalate situations, keep people calm, kind of have this good rapport with people. But if I'm being completely honest, we talked about even from week 1, she was throwing people like JM under the bus when I think she was really trying to help JM, but it all just kind of backfired even worse on him. Kuzi just, to me, was very similar actually to Ty. And maybe people don't see it the same, and I completely understand, but she had this way of being very condescending to people and having it be her way or the highway. And if you didn't agree with her way, well, you must be against her. And that was kind of the downfall with her and Zach. That was the downfall with her and Daniel, even Anika as well. Once she felt that they weren't doing what she wanted to, she hitched her wagon on the Ty even more. I think overall, though, she was probably the best player. If I had to rank like the top players in the game, Kuzi, I think Zach, as much as people don't like Zach, I think Zach was one of the best players that we had in this house. Ty, I think, goes up there just for his competition game. His social game was terrible. But yeah, I think Kuzi is probably the best player we had, but she still made a lot of mistakes along the way and wasn't perfect either. No one on this cast was a phenomenal player. There was not one person that was a really, really good player on this season, but also that's sometimes the best. I like my Big Brother 2 ways, when they're the worst and when they're the best players, and nowhere in between. I want messiness, or I want the greatest gameplay of everybody. And they all have to be on the same level. I don't want one great player and the rest bad. I don't want one bad player and the rest good. I want it all to be somewhat even. And that's kind of what we had with this cast, which is why I think overall it was a really good season. Nene didn't do much, but you know what? She was fun having her in the house. She had a few little moments. The veto win where she saved Renee was really kind of a great moment back on the week when Jonathan was evicted. But overall, not much to really say about her. She didn't really do much inside the house, sadly. Renee also was one of those people that's up there. She's probably like a top 4 in the best players that we had this season. And she wasn't perfect either. She didn't have the competition side, but she had a good mind for the game. She really seemed to understand what she needed to do. She just never really was able to accomplish that well. She also made a lot of mistakes in the game that ended up costing her in the end. But overall, I think, you know what? She did a decent job. She should be proud of how she did. Anika did nothing. She did absolutely nothing. In fact, there's 2 times that Claudia ended up losing this game. It was when she cut Daniel, and it was when she cut Anika. She probably should have cut Daniel earlier, and then in hindsight, because she ended up winning the HOH, I think she should have kept Anika and took Anika to the end. I do think at the moment, though, when you have the choice between Anika and Daniel, not knowing whether or not Ty would win, it was smarter to cut Anika, because I feel like Ty would have taken Anika over Claudia and would have cut Daniel before he cut Anika. So it was smarter at that moment to cut Daniel. But in hindsight, knowing that she won the HOH, it would have been better to take Anika, because if she takes Anika, I think she wins in a landslide. Anika did nothing in this game. The only competition she won lasted 15 seconds. 5 seconds longer than Kyle on BB24. That's literally it. She did nothing in this game at all. Daniel. Here's the thing. Daniel's up there as well. He's probably top 5 in the best players to play this season. He had a really good social game. The idea that there was a thing during the finale where they said he was in the middle of the guys alliance and the girls alliance. He really wasn't. His main thing was the Shady Bunch the whole time. And other than that, like, he had a good relationship with Zach. He had a good relationship with Ty a bit there. It never came to the point where those really mattered to help him in the long run. He saved Ty with the veto, which ended up not really mattering and kind of helped a little bit with the downfall of the crown. Maybe if Ty leaves that week, the crown is able to stick it through even more. But yeah, overall, didn't do much in the game other than have a really good social game. As far as strategic game, didn't really have much of that either, though I think he probably thinks he had a good one. But overall, decent player. But again, nobody in this season was a great player. Claudia, we've already mentioned, I think there were 3 big mistakes she made this season. One was during the double, not putting Ty up on the block initially. If she does that, Nene stays in the game, and I think that gives her a little bit easier path to the end. Because even worst case scenario, if she's in a Final Four situation with Ty, Claudia, Nene, and Renee, I don't think any of them Claudia before they cut Ty or Renee. I don't think any of them would cut her in the final 2. I think Renee might take Nene before she took Claudia, but Nene would take Claudia before she took Renee. Ty would have taken Claudia before Renee. I think having Nene leave that week was bad for her game. And if she would have put Ty up initially, yes, that could have hurt the relationship they had moving forward. But I still don't think it changes the fact that he wouldn't cut her in the end. I think he would have still tried to work with her, even though she put him up on the block for the second time at that point. I think she could have gotten over that. So I think that was her first big mistake of the game, which was a question she was asked during the finale that she didn't own up to. She, in fact, didn't even answer the question at all. Then her second big mistake was cutting Anika before Daniel. And this is, again, one that I was just talking about. It's kind of a hindsight thing. Knowing that she ended up winning the final HOH, it would have been better to get rid of Daniel. But I do think there's reasons why she kept Daniel over Anika. In that chance that she didn't win the HOH, it kind of locked her up on going to the final 2. Because I don't think Ty would have taken Daniel over her either. Where Anika might have taken Daniel over her. She wasn't 100% sure how that would have worked out. And then there's Ty. Literally no social game. He was rubbing people the wrong way from week 1. There was Sweatergate. His beef with Rob was just something that completely destroyed the guys alliance moving forward. He had issues with pretty much all of the house guests at one point. He had this toxic relationship with Claudia where they were break up and get back together, and they had this like weird showmance going on. It's a showmance, the first one to make it to the final two ever. Really kind of a crazy scenario where this is the showmance that is the one that gets the final two. But yeah, overall though, amazing comp beast. The most wins in Big Brother Canada with 8. He's one behind Janelle and Michael from BB24 with 9 wins. So he's one behind the record for all Big Brother, but the most in Big Brother Canada history with 8. If he would have won the HOH, it would have ended up being 9 competitions in total. But where he ranks as far as winners in all of BBCan, I think he's mid, right? He's not one of the worst ones, but he's definitely not one of the best ones because he didn't have a social game. There was no social game at all. I think people like Dane, Ty from BBCan9, Kevin Martin are all ahead of him. Kevin Jacobs, even though I'm not a huge fan of Kevin Jacobs, I think he's ahead of Ty. Who else? I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot that are ahead of him, but he's mid. He's somewhere in the middle of BBCan winners. You know, he might even be more towards the bottom, but it doesn't mean he's a bad winner. I think he actually was one of the most deserving people to win the game. He wasn't the best. He wasn't the best, but he wasn't the worst either. But what did you guys think? What did you think of the season as a whole? What did you think of Ty winning? Who were some of your favorite players? Let me know in those comments down below. Also, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, smash that like button. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video, you never miss a stream. Links to all of my socials in the description down below. Pinned comment as well for the Twitch, Twitter, Discord, Kick. Go check out the Kick stream. We will be watching Survivor every Wednesday still on there, so make sure you come hang out with us for that. BB24 or BB25, I should say, just around the corner. We'll be doing all kinds of stuff for that. So keep an eye out for the channel for any little updates along the way, any news. There's also possibilities that we get more Big Brother in the fall and winter, especially with the writer's strike going on. There's even an actor's strike and a director's strike that could be happening as well in Hollywood. So lots going on in the entertainment world, which could lead to more reality shows getting picked up. But once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.